Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. Creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great. They'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. I'm Michael Chabot, and I'm here to tell you that there will always be challenges in life, and in some cases, like mine, tragedies. But human beings are resilient. All you need to do is make a decision today. Follow me on this journey to hope, and together we will live, we will learn, and we will grow. And hopefully, we will find some hope in every day. Welcome to my journey to hope. Are you there, God? It's me, Michael. You know, the title of this episode is, it's all around my faith. It's all around my relationship. And it's all around what happened to me after my daughter passed away. And let me start by saying that this isn't a religious episode. This is whatever you believe. You know, you could be Muslim, you could be Buddhist, you could be Catholic, you could be Jewish, Christian, Mormon, whatever it is. It's about the universe, your creator, or in my case, God. You know, I've said in other episodes, I was raised Catholic, so we always went to church. My grandmother, God, I think, bless her soul, she went to church, you know, like every day at the last stages of her life. She lived down the street from a church, and she was there all the time. I used to tell her, man, Grandma, you say more prayers than the priest does. And she would laugh and say, oh, get out of here. But, you know, she had her Bible and her prayers, and every morning and every night she stuck to them. And, you know, I always looked up to her. She was an amazing lady. She had such an amazing spirit, and she knew how to live life to the fullest. And so, you know, in my life, God was to be more feared than, you know, believed in and loved. It was, don't do that. God's watching you. Don't do that. God will punish you. So that's what I grew up with. And I've always had faith. I've always believed in God, the Creator. But I don't know that it was real. It was kind of a forced faith. Like, well, that's what I've grown up with. That's what everybody believes. But maybe, I don't know. And let me tell you that when my daughter died, I would tell you, there is no God. God wouldn't do this to me. God wouldn't do this to my daughter. The God that I've been taught to know is a loving God. God wouldn't take my daughter at 14 years old, a week from her 15th birthday. There's just no way he would do that. And when the doctor came into the little chapel we were waiting at the hospital and told us that our daughter passed away, the first thing I said was, no, God, no. No, God, no. I think I even yelled it at the top of my lungs. You know, it's interesting. I've always thought how much courage and how difficult it must have been for that doctor to come in the room and talk to us. I can't imagine what he must have been thinking before he came into the room. Talk about courage. Talk about strength. In his position, I would imagine, like most of us would want to run and hide. I can't imagine. And his bravery is amazing. You know, I don't know if I talked about this, but not long after my daughter passed away, we got an email from a woman whose son was working at the hospital that day. He was volunteering, and he was there and saw what happened. And as I said in a previous episode, all the nurses in the ER, all the staff, they were all in tears for us. They were all crying. They were all just emotionally distraught. And what really touched me is that the mother said, my son was there that day and it's inspired him to become a doctor. He wants to become a doctor so that he can help prevent what happened to your daughter. And in those moments, now in reflection, I realized that that is God. That's how God works through people. That's how you take tragedy and turn it into something special. That's really the word. It's something special. Those are the things that are important to me. And, I was so angry with God after my daughter died. At first I was, as I said, there's no God. I told my mother, I said, all these years we've been, going to church and religious and raised Catholic, and it's all bullshit, Mom. It's all bullshit. If there was a God, he would not take my daughter. He would not have done this to my family. And I felt like that for a few months. And I think as time went on, I started to see signs. Especially since my meditation, I want to share something with you guys. And I've shared this with a few of my friends. And you can interpret it how you will. But every morning I meditate. And I do guided meditation. I need to because I'm ADD. So I think if I didn't use guided meditation, it would be a little more difficult. But so I use guided meditation. I use my noise canceling headphones. And it was on a Monday, I believe, not too long ago. This was just a few weeks ago. And I was meditating. And towards the end of my meditation, I was saying, God, let me feel your presence in my life. Let me feel, you all around me today. Show me signs that you're with me. Show me signs that, I'm walking the path that I should. Help me to serve God. Not only you, but your people, Lord. And then I started doing the same thing to my daughter. Let me feel your presence, Gab. Show me signs that you're with me, Gabriella. Be around me. Show me you're there. And after I finished my meditation, I was sitting in the chair, just kind of resting. And to frame it up, the chair that I was in backs up to our backyard, and there's glass doors, French doors to the left, and a window behind the chair. And the chair's about 10 feet off the window. So I was sitting there and I heard like a bang, but I didn't know what the hell it was. And so then I got up and went to the kitchen, and my wife came down, and, we were having tea and just talking. And then our dog came down and he wanted to go outside, and I went to let him out. And in front of the window, just to the right of the French doors, was a dead bluebird. A big bluebird, like, a foot tall. I mean, it was a big bird. I'm guessing it was a blue jay. And it literally flew into that window. And let me also say that there's a balcony that covers that window. So our bedroom is directly above, and there's a balcony that covers it. So it's not like the bird accidentally flew into the window. But I didn't think much of it. I was like, oh, poor bird. It was such a beautiful creature. Unfortunately, I had to get a shovel and pick it up and put it in a bag and put it in the trash. And, any kind of death now really affects me. Because of just, it's loss of a life. Whether it's an animal or a human being, it's loss of a life. And, when I put the bird into the trash, I said a little prayer, and that was it. I didn't think much of it. Just went on with my day and finished my morning routine. And the next morning, after my workout, I sat in the chair and I meditated, and I said the same things again. God, please let me feel your presence. Let me serve you. Show me signs that you're in my life. Gabriella, please let me feel you in my life, be around me, show me signs that you're with me. And then I was sitting there just breathing after my meditation. My dog was laying at my feet, and all of a sudden I heard this bang that like shook the house. My dog jumped. I was like, what the hell was that? I was like, what was that? And I thought to myself, there's no way that it's another bird. There's no way. Right? So I get up out of the chair and I look out the window, the doors, I should say, and there's nothing there. And I step up to the doors and look to the right. And there is a 3-foot tall hawk standing there. He looked at me. I looked at him. And then he flew with just like, it was amazing, like 2, 3 flaps of his wings, and he was behind my house on the neighbor's tree looking back at me. And in that moment, every hair on my body stood on end. I got chills throughout my body, and I literally started to cry because I knew in that moment that I was in God's presence and my daughter's presence. And I said in that moment, I will never doubt again. I will not doubt again ever. It was one of those moments in life that just changes you. You know, when you read books and you hear interviews and stories of people and you hear things that they say in that moment, everything changed for me. And for me in that moment, it really changed. And I just want to serve. So I know you guys are going to think this is crazy, but when I was meditating, I had a vision. And the vision is that it was the end of my life, and I went to heaven, and God was there, and my daughter was standing next to him. And God had his arms open, and my daughter was smiling and welcoming me. And I just felt this overwhelming feeling of joy because I knew that I had taken the tragedy of my daughter's death and served the best that I could and made the best with that circumstance. And when I got to heaven, God, or you guys call it your creator, the universe, whomever, whatever power you believe in, was proud of me. You know, I listened to a gentleman by the name of Ed Milet, and he said something recently that really resonated with me, which is, he said, I imagine when I get to heaven, God has the perfect replication of who he made me to be. And when I get to heaven and meet that guy, my goal is to be as close to damn possible is that replication of myself that God made. And when I meet him, I want to shake his hand and say, hey, we did pretty good, huh, Ed? And that really resonated with me. We have to hold ourselves to higher standards. It's so easy to go through life and distract ourselves with our phones, with television, with drama, with all those things. And you know, we all are born special, every one of us. I read a quote recently that really stayed with me, and it says, when you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live a life so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. And that really meant a lot to me. I mean, that goes right along with the last episode, which is be the spark. You know, some people laughed at me like, oh, be the spark, be the spark. But what it really means is that be the inspiration for somebody, starting with yourself. Inspire yourself first and foremost. Make commitments and live up to them. Make commitments and live up to them. So for me on this journey, it went from there is no God to where, God, if you're there, I hate you. Why did you take my daughter? And I can't say that it was one moment, one day. I think it was just a little bit over time as I got to know myself better that I discovered my relationship with God. And that I realized that part of the reason I was so unhappy for so many years is because I was so focused on me. What can I do for me? What can I get out of this for me? What's in it for me? That's all what most of us are about. And if you know those people that aren't, those people that serve, it's completely different. I talked about my captain, the captain of my hockey team. He's a man who serves. He's a man who leads with his heart. That never changes with him. He's just this warm, loving man who leads with his heart. It doesn't make him weak. It makes him strong. He shows vulnerability. You know, I was listening to something else the other day, and in it she talked about, and it was Brene Brown. Somebody had told me to watch her Netflix special, and I really thought it was interesting when she talks about vulnerability and courage and says that you can't be courageous without being vulnerable. And you know, it's funny. I've always been a vulnerable person. As a kid in our family, we would sit down and have talks, and I'd be the one that always talked and always showed emotion, and my sister would barely talk and barely show emotion, and it used to make me so angry. And as I became an adult and the world got the best of me, I decided to hide that vulnerability, hide that emotion, hide who I really was, like I talked about, hiding behind a mask. What my daughter's death did for me, and in my relationship with God, is that I realized, and I realize, I should say, that I don't want to hide behind a mask. I want to show my vulnerability, because in doing so, I can be courageous. I can walk this path. I can raise up from the insurmountable pain of losing my daughter and show people that there's hope. And there is hope. There is hope. And for me, my hope comes first and foremost because I now have a relationship with my Creator. I now do believe with all my heart and soul that there is a place we go after this life. I've seen so many signs from my daughter that it would take me 3 hours just to talk about them all here. And that day, with the two birds on 2 different days, back-to-back days, I meditate around the same time every morning. You can't tell me that's coincidence. That's what I told my wife when I ran upstairs to tell her. I said, you can't tell me that's coincidence. That's bullshit. There's no way. That's God. That is God. And you know, I want to also bring into this that, you know, some people have been saying to me, wow, you're so strong, you're so courageous, you're so this, you're so that. I'm just like you. I had a setback. You know, I hurt my back in the gym this week. Can't work out. This morning I got up and I went for a walk. I went for a 20-minute walk just to get the heart pumping and listen to one of my podcasts that I listened to. One of the guys I listened to today, I listened to Tom Bilyeu. Sorry, I always mispronounce Tom's name, from Impact Theory, and it was a really good episode. And it was interesting. He talked about, he had a ex-football player on who's now kind of on the same path that I'm on, trying to inspire people and show them that, you know, there's more to life than just existing. And he talked about his mom's journey and his mom battling cancer, and his mom beat cancer and then went to the doctor, and she said, you know, I'm just not feeling right. And they said, yeah, well, now you have brain cancer. And he said in that moment he was angry. And he said, but he took a moment, probably a long moment, and thought about it. And what he realized is that she's still blessed. Yes, she's battling brain cancer and it's awful, but she's still alive. She still has breath in her lungs. She still has a heart beating in her chest. She still has a chance to fight it. She still has a chance to beat it. She still has a chance to be alive. And I think the thing you take from that is, in life, it's perspective. It's perspective. It's easy to feel like the victim. It's easy to feel sorry for yourself. It's easy to just drown yourself in alcohol and drugs, in Netflix and Facebook and Instagram. And don't get me wrong, I look at those things. You know, this weekend we had a day where my daughter Gabriella, her favorite show was Stranger Things. And the new episodes came out. And so my daughter and my son and my wife and I sat down on a weekend and we watched a couple episodes. And we did it to honor our daughter. We did it to honor our Gabriella. And it made us all feel a little bit closer to her. And you know, those moments are always bittersweet because you feel connected, but there's always that longing, that tearing at your heart because you know it's another reminder that she's not here. And I think, God, the hardest thing with death is the finality, right? You can't change it. And I'm a fixer. I'm a problem solver. You give me a problem and I'll work on that thing until I can figure it out, or I'll die trying. But with death, there is no solution. It's permanent. There's no way to fix it. What I'm really trying to say here is that I'm a guy who grew up, I don't want to say forced religion, but it was kind of forced. I didn't get a chance to make a decision, right? It's what my parents did. It's what their parents did. It's, you know, it's passed down from generation to generation. But I never understood, the meaning behind it. I just knew that I went to church and we stood up and we knelt down and we sat down and we said, you know, peace be with you. And we did communion and all the things that are part of a Catholic Mass. But, you know, I always found the thing that was interesting, right? And a lot of the priests always talk about this. You know, we call them parishioners, right? The people that belong to the church or the parish. And everybody's racing into the parking lot and fighting for a parking spot and fighting for the best seats in the church. And then we all pray and we all act like we're saints. And everybody's, godly in the church. And, then when church is over, we're all rushing to get out, back in our cars, cutting each other off, flipping each other off in the parking lot, and going back to being assholes. I think what I've realized from all of this is that in my relationship with God, I want to serve. I want to serve God, and I want to serve God's people. Those of you listening, just like me, I want to serve. I want to show you that no matter what life throws your way, you can find hope. It's a choice. I talked about this in my second episode called The Decision. It is a decision. You can choose to be a victim and feel sorry for yourself and curl up in a ball and cry. Or you can choose to fight. And it's freaking hard. It's hard. Let me tell you. When I hurt my back in the gym the other day, and I hurt my back pretty bad, so much so that I could barely stand up straight. I laid on the floor of my gym and cried. I cried for a few reasons. Number one, because I was in a lot of pain. But number two is because the gym is my therapy. It gives me so much. And I thought, God, I can't lose this. And in that moment, I was being a victim. I took a couple breaths and I said, all right, that's enough. Look, it doesn't matter. If you could never work out again, you could still go for a walk. You could still walk outside. You're alive. You're breathing. You have a heart beating in your chest, a brain that's thinking thoughts. If you can't work out again, it's not the end of the world. You have to take ownership. You have to take ownership. Being a victim is easy. We all do it at periods in our life. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many of us suffer. Because you say, well, why me? What's in it for me? Why didn't I get that? Why did he or she get that over me? Instead of looking in the mirror and saying to yourself, all right, let's be honest. I didn't get it because I didn't work hard enough. I did just what it took. That's not going to get it done. Whatever it is I'm trying to achieve, I've got to do the work. If you're out of shape right now and you want to be in really good shape, like the people you see on Instagram and in magazines and on TV, you got to get your ass out of bed and do the work. You got to change your diet. You got to get rid of fast food and crap that you eat and soda and all the other stuff you put in your body. That's where it starts. That's where it starts. So I went from not believing in God to hating God. I think the transformation started for me, and again, I don't want this to be a sermon and a religious thing here, but here's what I want to say to you is for me, this is what changed it all for me, because I was angry. I was angry with God. How could you take my precious, my beautiful 14-year-old daughter, a week before her 15th birthday, who was the sweetest little peach pie on the planet? She was a doll, an angel. And then one day I thought about it. Who the hell am I? God gave up his only son for me. His only son. He stood there and watched. Well, he didn't stand there, but he watched as his only son was crucified on the cross. And that's what I believe. Those are my beliefs. But again, I thought to myself, who the hell am I? I still have 2 beautiful, healthy children. God only had one, and he gave him up for all of us. That kind of changed it for me. I thought to myself, God, you're a selfish son of a bitch, Michael. And I think there's a lesson to be learned there. We're all so focused, and I talked about this a little earlier, we're all so focused about us. My piece of the pie. What can I get out of this? And listen, I get it. We all have bills. We have pressures. Some of us have kids that we're trying to raise and make sure that, they can stand on their own 2 feet. Some of us have elderly parents to take care of that didn't do a good job in their own lives. Some of us may have spouses or partners that, maybe aren't doing too good in their lives. And, life is tough. There's a lot of pressure. But what I would say to that is boo-hoo. Yeah, boo-hoo. It's hard. Life's hard. Life is hard. And every day it's going to test you, and every day it's going to challenge you. And I would say is find some faith. You don't have to believe as I believe, but find some faith, whether it's universe, creator, God, find some faith. Life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And if for any of you have run one like I have, there are moments and points where it gets really hard and your body hurts really bad and you want to quit and you want to give up and you've got to push through. You've got to. I'm reading an amazing book right now called You Can't Hurt Me, and I'm sure a lot of you listening to this have read it or have heard of it, but it's a story of David Goggins, and his childhood was pretty darn awful, and he could have easily gone the wrong way. He could have easily turned into a thug, a criminal, but he had an inner voice and something that pushed him. And I won't tell you much more than that, but read the book. I want to share this story with you, and this is how I believe God speaks through people. So I want to say it was about a week after my daughter passed away, and I'll preface this by saying that some of our friends that we have met through hockey, husband and wife, they're just such amazing people. They have 2 kids, a son who's the same age as my son and a daughter who's 1 year older. And, they're very active in their church. They're just such amazing people. They lead with their heart with everything they do. I mean, they just ooze love. We all know people like that, right? They just ooze love. They are they're so unselfish. It's inspiring. I'm in awe of them. And they stepped up and did so much for us after my daughter's death. But this one story just really hit home with me. And so the mom told me this story, and she said, we were in the car on the way home, and their son, and I'll tell you their son's name, Tim. Tim said, Mom, I'm really angry with God. And let me just say, Tim is such a warm, loving young man. I've had the privilege of coaching him in hockey, and he's such a great kid. He is all heart. He takes after his mom and dad. I mean, he's just such a loving young man. And so back to what he said, Mom, I'm really angry with God. And she said, okay, Tim, well, tell me, why are you angry with God? And he said, why did God have to take Gabriella? She was such a great person, such a loving person. There's so many bad people in the world. Why did God have to take Gabriella, Mom? And his sister, at the time, an 8th grader, paused and looked at her brother. And I'm going to mess this up. I'm not going to say it as eloquently as the mom told me, but she said something to the effect of this. Tim, if you were walking through a field of flowers and you wanted to pick flowers, wouldn't you pick the most beautiful ones? When she told me that story, every hair on my body stood up because I thought, it's so true. You've all heard me speak about how special my daughter Gabriella was and how loving and bright and amazing she was. And it makes sense. It makes sense why God would call her home. It makes sense why He would take her before we were ready to give her up. So I just want to wrap up with this one and say that for me, there is a God. For me, there is a creator. For me, there is a heaven. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to serve others to the best of my ability, starting out with being a spark for them, leading by example, not just for my family, but for strangers, reaching out with my heart. Because we all have things that we are dealing with. All of us. You meet these people, you think everything in their life is perfect because on the outside, everything looks great. Every time you see them, they're smiling and they're happy. Everything looks perfect. It's like we all know that couple that you thought, my God, what happened? They got a divorce? They had the perfect relationship. I would have never suspected. Why? Because they're wearing masks. They're showing the world what the world wants to see. Imagine that weight that they're carrying. We all know because we've carried weight like that. When you release that weight, it's amazing. So don't be a victim. Don't lay in the corner and feel sorry for yourself. Like I said, I learned a really good lesson. 5 minutes. Take 5 minutes. Bitch, moan, complain, cry, feel sorry for yourself, whatever you got to do. And at the end of 5 minutes, you say to yourself, I can't change that. And move on. Move forward. I know in my life, I can't change what happened to my family and my daughter. And yes, I took a hell of a lot longer than 5 minutes. And then I decided, it's time to get up. It's time to move forward. It's time to lead. It's time to be an example. It's time to be a spark for the world. It's time to show others that there's hope after tragedy. So yes, there is hope in the world. But you got to create it. You can't wait for it to come to you. You've got to create it. So go out and create hope. And yes, God answered me. Are you there, God? It's me, Michael. And let me tell you, over the last 5 or 6 months, he came back with a resounding yes. Yes, Michael, I'm there. And I'm holding you up. And I'm walking with you. And I'm guiding you down this path. And you are serving me. And you are making me proud. So go out, make your God, your creator, the universe proud of you. I love you, Gabriella.